Hello, this is Frida Liu and you're watching The Shift Asia. The RHB Banking Group has revealed a pathway to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Now, this goal aligns RHB with ASEAN's just and responsible transition to a low-carbon economy and leverages its 5-year sustainability strategy and roadmap, that's from 2022 to 2026, by establishing a new Pillar 2 committed to achieving net zero by 2050. To find out what this entails, I'm here with Group Chief Sustainability and Communications Officer and CEO of RHB Foundation, Puan Norazzah Sulaiman. Very good to be seeing you again and meeting you and finally getting to talk to you.
Thank you, Freda.
So you've got this plan, this big plan, but maybe we can talk a little bit about RHB's 5-year sustainability strategy and roadmap and what that entails.
Thank you, Freda. Okay, so we are now in phase 2 of our sustainability journey, right? We started phase 2 in 2022 and we developed our 5-year sustainability strategy. Now, the 5-year sustainability strategy and roadmap is a very holistic strategy, captures 4 key pillars. Pillar number 1 is basically sustainable and responsible banking, and that basically covers what we do as a financial institution in helping our client, our customer, transition to a low carbon practices, right? Pillar number 2 is what you mentioned earlier, our commitment to achieve net zero by 2050. Now, that in itself is a very extensive pillar, which I'm going to take you through later, right? Pillar number 3 is basically embedding good practices within the organization, right? You know, as a banking institution, we are very, very regulated. And when you're regulated, you have to make sure that our governance and our practices is very strong. And so this is where we've put in place a 3rd pillar, which basically focus on what we do from a governance standpoint in putting in good practices within the organization. And the 4th is basically a pillar where we spelled out our contribution to the communities within which we operate. Again, that is an extensive pillar. There are 3 core focus area, one of which, and which is probably the biggest pillar, is nurturing future generation and also lifting communities. So again, we'll take you through that later, right, as we get into the conversation.
Right, and there's so much to unpack, right? Now, under the roadmap, one of your pillars is committed to achieving net zero by 2050, and the focus areas, as you mentioned, there was reported recently, reduction of finance emissions, driving growth in green financial services, and supporting companies committed to carbon neutrality and integration of sustainable and low carbon practices into its own operations. Can you, elaborate on each?
Okay. We started our Group Climate Action, we call it Group Climate Action Program, GCAP, in short. We started the journey way back in 2022, early 2022. Now, when we started GCAP, it was really with the intention or objective of determining our finance emission baseline, right? Now, we can't go out there talking about a net zero commitment if we do not know what is the baseline. Now, as you know, as a banking institution, our biggest finance emission reduction is for Scope 3. Scope 3 in itself is really finance emission by our customers, by our suppliers, right? So that's like, indirect finance emission. So what we did in the last 12 to 18 months is that we basically worked on determining what is our finance emission baseline. In doing so, what we did was, it was really a 12 to 18 months project involving everybody across the organization, not just us as sustainability, but the climate risks team, the business guys, everybody coming together. So at the end of 2023, right, we came up with our finance emission baseline and determined what are the key sectors that contribute to this finance emission baseline. We've determined that 5 key sectors. We developed the decarbonization strategy. We developed processes, policies to manage the risks of climate change within the organization, right? So what we did was, as at December 2022, right, our finance emission baseline is about 9.8 metric ton, right? And out of that 9.8, right, we've also identified the 5 key sectors that contributed to this 9.8, right? So the 5 key sectors were energy, oil and gas, palm oil, transportation, construction, right? So these are the 5 key sectors. Now, these 5 key sectors basically contribute to more than 80% of our finance emission. right? And these 5 sectors are, about 60% of our total exposure.
Right.
So if we are able to address these 5 key sectors,
You already...
we are 83%, roughly about 83%, right? So that is where we are. Now, what we've done is we have developed a strategy towards achieving the target, right? It's easy to come up with FE baseline, right? So what we've done then was that we determine what is our interim target, what is our long-term target. Now, we have taken 2030 as an interim target,
Right.
and obviously we have taken 2050 as a long-term target, right? So, when you look at finance emission reduction, Scope 1 and Scope 2 become very critical, and Scope 3 is something we can't ignore. Scope 3 is definitely a bigger contributor to it. So Scope 1, Scope 2 is where we look at the things that we do internally, right? So we've gone out publicly and we've said that we will achieve carbon neutrality by 2030, right? And so that is really looking at the things that we do internally. But as a bank, there is a limitation. I mean, we're not manufacturing companies. As a banking institution, your finance emission is still the most critical. So under the Net Zero 2050 commitment, the first strategic objective is to reduce our finance emission baseline by 20% by 2030 and 96% by 2050, right? Now, strategic objective 1 basically looks at our existing portfolio, right? How are we going to reduce this existing portfolio? And as I mentioned earlier, 5 key sectors which we have identified. Now, within these 5 key sectors, we're looking at reducing finance emission 20% by 2030, 96% by 2050. Now, in reducing finance emission, right, basically, once we start that journey, finance emission don't reduce automatically, right? It will go up first for certain sector before it basically comes down, right? So that's how it works in the scenario of finance emission reduction, right? So looking at current portfolio itself is not enough, right? So what we do as well is we have strategic objective 2, which basically complements strategic objective 1. Now, strategic objective 2 really looks at how we grow our green financial services. So it's a balancing act, right? Looking at your current portfolio, reducing that. How do we then reduce it further is by bringing in new portfolios, green portfolios, right? So under our strategic objective 2, we are really looking at increasing green financial services by 40%, right? Now, when we do that, really, it's looking at the kind of lending and financing as well as investment activities that we could do, right? Now, not all green financial services will contribute to finance emission reduction. Some will reduce finance emission reduction to a lot, some will not. So renewable energy is one that will help a lot. Right? Probably, supporting CCUS, carbon capture utilization facilities and all that will probably also help a lot towards reducing finance emission, right? So under strategic objective 2, we're looking at increasing green financial services by 40%, as well as supporting companies that has committed to carbon neutrality. Right? Now, so when we do that, right, we are now looking at 40% increase, and probably by the year 2050, we're looking at about 90% into green financial services, right? It's a long-term target. There's a lot of dependencies to it, so which we'll also talk about it later. So, but the third component to it is, of course, looking at how we do things internally. So addressing our own operational footprint, right? Right now, we've achieved about 43% in carbon, our target is 45% by 2026, right? And by 2030, we should be able to achieve a reduction in our own internal operational footprint by about 60%. The balance of the 40%, we'll probably be looking at nature-based solution. That is something that we are still sort of evaluating today. So these 3 strategic objectives contribute to our commitment towards achieving net zero by 2050.
So you've got to really sort of look at it in compartmentalizing and looking in different parts as well, right? Now, where do you foresee the greatest roadblocks, and what are the plans to mitigate these?
Number one, there are a lot of critical enablers, right?
Okay.
One is I would say latest available information or latest available data.
Right.
You see, today when we calculate our finance emission baseline, we're using the PCAF methodology. PCAF is really an accounting methodology for finance emission,
Right.
which a lot, or rather most financial institutions are actually using today. But PCAF uses proxy data.
Okay.
Okay, so today I'm sure data is
Yes.
one critical enabler. So when we use proxy data, the quality of the information that we have, the quality of our data that we have is not the greatest.
Okay.
It's not the best,
Okay.
right? We still need to improve on that one. So as we move along, we need to. And I'm sure there will be a lot more of solutions, or rather solution provider offering better kind of calculation methodology for us to use in future. So number one is really looking at latest available finance emission calculation methodology. Number two is quality of data available, right? We do know where our gaps are internally, and we do know the key information that we would require for us to be able to improve the quality of data in calculating finance emission, right? We do know that. Number three is the readiness of our client,
Right.
Because we can only achieve if our client move in tandem with us, right? So everybody must move together, otherwise
in the same direction.
Yes, exactly. So what it is that we are now working very, very closely with our client. In fact, what we have done today is we have tiered our clients into 3 tier.
Okay.
Tier 1, they are the PLCs. They are the bigger boys. Their readiness level is probably at the max, right? The second tier would be the mid-cap. They're just about to start their journey. Not there yet, but also assessing what needs to be done, what they need to invest in, technologies and all that.
And regulated.
That's right, and regulated. The third tier are the SMEs, the MSMEs, the SMEs, right? And the third tier would probably be one of the biggest challenge for us, right? But we've got plans, right, for them. Now, the other key challenges is regulation, directive, legislation, So I think this country, Malaysia, the government and the regulators, the government regulatory bodies, they work in tandem to move our climate agenda, which is fantastic, right? And we're seeing Malaysia being probably one of the most aggressive countries when it comes to that, right? So we're seeing that happening right now, which is good. And the other is, of course, maturity level of ESG practices in this country, right? So we've done a lot to try and mitigate. Now, on the data side, we are now assessing technologies. We are now assessing service providers that can probably come in as an alternate to what we are currently using in calculating finance emission, right? Number two, we are working with industry partners, regulatory authorities. We're a member of JC3. We work very closely with those within JC3 to see how we can sort of fast track certain things. The government has introduced National Energy Transition Roadmap, which all of us in the banking sector, including RHB, is looking at how we can support that, right? And engagement with our client is something, like I said, divided into 3 tiers. We are basically working, our relationship manager particularly, they are working sort of very closely with our client to see how we can assist our client in the transition journey. Now, what we have done, Freda, just to share with you, is to help our relationship managers in the conversation with our client. We've even developed a relationship manager playbook.
Okay.
Sectorial playbook, because when you go out and talk to the client, the language must be the same. There must be consistency, right? So we must, going out there talking to them, we need to understand their journey.
Their pain points.
Their pain points, their challenges. What can we do to help? Not just from a funding perspective, from advisory. So this kind of conversation takes place, and with the RM playbooks, it helped our RM to kind of like start the conversation. But I think most importantly, and which is something I really want to highlight, is SMEs. One of our bigger agenda in our 5-year sustainability strategy is how we engage small, medium enterprises, right? So what we have done is last year we signed a strategic partnership with Tenaga, TNB, right? Within that strategic partnership, we are the provider of capital funding, right? And we've put in place sustainable financing program for SMEs. Now, TNB comes with the skill set, the expertise, the technical expertise, solutions, through their subsidiaries, which is G-Spark. They've got renewable energy solution. They've got technical advisors who can come forward and give advice to SMEs. So what we've done is we did roadshows.
Yeah.
We went and we partnered them, and we started our roadshow last year. We did one in Klang Valley, we did one in Perak, and one more is coming in Johor Bahru very soon. And we are going across the nation to engage as many SME clients of ours as well as TNB is concerned, so that everybody will be, moving in tandem with us.
Yes.
So we acknowledge the fact that with SMEs, it's all about engagement is one, awareness, increasing their knowledge level. If they see the business case to it, they will probably jump onto the bandwagon and move together with us. So that's where we are when it comes to mitigating all the key challenges that we are currently facing.
And I guess it also benefits everybody, right? I think of win-win, right? When you look at the first two objectives, we know that there are steps in the right direction, but how do you see this impacting the group's business in the long term? Because we know all those industries where you talked about, so, it's a bit more bigger, and they will probably be a large part of your client base as well, right? So how do you see the impact for the long term, or the positive side anyway?
I mean, we are a public listed company, and when you're a public listed company, we are dealing with, or rather, we need to make sure that not just us, but our suppliers, our customers, are all moving together with us, right? In the longer term, obviously, you need to invest in sustainability, and everybody's saying, the capital expenditure is huge, right? But we see the benefit and we see opportunities that comes with it, right? The opportunity is moving forward. Malaysia is not alone in this journey. Globally, everybody is moving that direction, and you cannot be left behind, right? At the end of the day, when investors decide to invest in you as a public listed company, they look at your sustainability practices. Right, and as the nation move towards greener practices, transitioning to low carbon practices, this is where your opportunity comes in, right? And the opportunity is in terms of the business that you could do, right? And how you can support your client. At the end of the day, client will or customers will probably not want to deal with us if we don't move that direction, right? So I mean, again, in the longer term, we see that for the business to remain sustainable, right? We need to move this direction. And really, my aspiration is to see sustainability as part of business as usual in the organization. And even if you look at the key component of sustainability, it's really the things that you've been doing all along, except that we have not labeled it as sustainability.
And if you want to do business the right way, that's
the way to go.
Right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so embedding good practice also one of your commitments, and looking at a sustainable supply chain. So what are some of the considerations as a financial services company when we speak of supply chains?
Supply chain is, I mean, for us in the banking sector, we are probably not like, those in the manufacturing production, but still, we need to manage our supply chain because, as I said earlier, when we move, we have to move together with everybody else, right? And our suppliers needs to move together with us. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to achieve our net zero commitment as well. And what's critical is that we need to manage the risks, right? Now, if our supplier don't move together with us and don't adopt sustainable practices, it will be a risk to us, right? And risk from standpoint of financial losses, reputational, regulatory non-compliance, right? So those are quite critical to us as a banking entity. So in order for us to move forward with our net zero commitment, our supply chain needs to move along with us. So what we've done there is that we've actually introduced or launched our supply chain charter, right? Sustainable supply chain charter. And we've developed it in such a way that we we provide room for our suppliers to actually implement, or rather integrate sustainability into their business and operations, right? It's not like if you don't do it, out you go. No, it doesn't work like that. So what we have done is we have identified what are the key factors that they need to look at within a certain period, and you know, they must do it within a certain period, and if they're not able to do it within a certain period, they need to come back to us and justify why they can't do that. So, you know, we've launched our sustainable supply chain framework. We've developed a code of conduct for our suppliers, and we've gotten them to sign the code of conduct, right? To basically, you know, not to say guarantee, but basically to tell us that they will comply with our code of conduct within a certain period of time. Right. So they've done that, and at this point in time, we've got about 70% of our suppliers who are on board and who have already signed our code of conduct. The balance is still in the process of doing that.
Changing and improving.
Yes.
So let's talk about the other commitment, which is about enriching and empowering communities, right? What's the work you do to support marginalized communities in terms of capacity building and skills development?
Two things, right? Or two, I would say, flagship program that we do. One is supporting MSME, right? We're quite big on supporting micro, small, medium enterprises. We launched a program in 2022, which we call RHB Jom Base, right? Now, with RHB Jom Base, we basically onboard, at this point, 4 cohorts of MSMEs, totaling about almost 450 MSMEs. What we do is we put them through a 3-month training program, which basically teaches them how to manage their cash flow, how to market their product, how to brand their business, how to do proposal papers or pitching, you know. So we put them through a 3-month program, right? And at the end of that 3-month program, we get them to do a business pitch to a panel of judges comprising of those from RHB and those external parties, right? And the top 30 of the MSMEs, right, will be given a grant, right? So at this point in time, we've got about 450. We've onboarded 450. This year, we're going into 3 other cohorts, and this time round, we're going to the state of Sarawak, Johor Bahru, and Melaka, right? We thought, you know, we don't want to just focus in Klang Valley. We want to go out of Klang Valley, right, as well. Now, 3 of our MSMEs recently participated in the SOBA Award, and one of them won the best. So and these MSMEs are those that come from B40 background, you know.
So you've elevated them.
Yes. So the intention is, in the long term, if they do well in their business, we will support them. So this is part of the pipelines of building that skill set, capacity. I mean, you know, we don't want to just be giving grants or funding. You know, we want to make sure that when you do your business, you do it properly. You know how to manage your cash flow. You know how to prepare your pitch or proposal. You know how to brand your product. You know how to use social media to market your business and stuff like that. So that's what we do. So we work with Taylor's Community College to develop the training program, and together with Taylor's, we actually do the training to this MSME. So that's on the business front. Yeah. The other component of it is, of course, our Excel Academic Excellence Program and scholarship, and that's meant for B40 children. We put them through tuition program, and those who meet a certain criteria will be given a scholarship. So the Academic Excellence Program is purely for B40 children, right? So in fact, this year we've got our first cohort of students who will be graduating. And I'm proud to say that most of them actually managed to score a CGPA of 3.5 and above. So yeah, that's good news.
Okay, and this is a separate question. Last question also, you're also the CEO of RHB Foundation, right? And what does the foundation support?
We support largely B40 youth, okay? well, because we are a tax exempt, we were given earlier. We were given a 5-year tax exempt status, and our objective is quite simple. The objective is really to help the B40 youth, right, to climb up to improve the living status, the living standards, the economic standard of the family, right? I mean, I don't believe in just giving away money, right? So we need to build that skill set. We need to empower them. So the foundation largely focuses on building the skill set of youth from B40 background, and we've got. As I mentioned, we've got multiple programs that helps with that, and on a yearly basis, we put aside about 4 to 5 million to help out, the B40 children to build their skill set and empower them.
And to get out of B40.
Yes. Basically, to help their family to move out of that living condition. I mean, just giving money, Freda, is not going to help. So you need to build that skill set, empower them, and to make sure that they can help the family move out of that living condition. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing on RHB's sustainability journey. And of course, you've been watching The Shift Asia.